Hi guys, welcome to a new edition of Tribina podcast. The reason we're speaking in English is because in our studio for the first time we have an international guest who is slowly getting more accustomed to our Croatian ways as he is the head coach of HNK Gorice. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to say hello to Mr. Valdas Dambrauskas in our studio. So coach, welcome.
Hvala. Dobar dan.
Oh, nice. My next question was how are you getting with Croatian language? I see it's coming, the basics are there.
Polako. Lagano. Laganini. Not that fast, not as fast as I would like, but yeah, more and more understand.
Does it have any similarities with Lithuanian to make it easier?
No, absolutely. Lithuanian is like quite unique. It's only Latvian and Lithuanian languages are similar in the world, and they know neighbors. And I speak quite fluently Russian, so that is about 20-30% similar words. I think about 20% similar to Croatian, so yeah, some words I can understand.
Well, slowly, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Earlier in your career, you were called Lithuanian Bosch. Do you like that comparison?
Who called that?
Yeah, I saw it in a Lithuanian website, so...
I think it was some kind of interview in Russian website.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think it was in Russian. I don't know. For me, maybe Andrius Bosch, of course, achieved much more than myself, so it should be a honor.
Yeah, you didn't play a professional player similar to him, so when you started your coaching career, at least in Croatia, that's a big problem when you're not an ex-player. How was your journey becoming a coach? Were there problems or?
I think it's not only in Croatia, I think everywhere all around the world, you know, like especially in Lithuania as well, and traditional football countries such as England, I think also is very important to have that professional players background, but as many examples are now in modern football, I think it's not necessary. As for me, yes, it was a lot of obstacles. I think it's much more easier when you are a professional player to follow that route into coaching, but as my examples show, it also shows that it's possible even if you didn't play football. But objectives, there are many. First of all, you know, the stereotypes from football society, from so-called experts, from owners of the club, from presidents of the club, how to employ a person who never played football and who doesn't know, you know, like what is being inside in that high pressure environment. But I think you can cover that with a big desire, with relentlessness, and of course with studying. That's I think the most important three components.
Yeah, you started your studying mostly in England, but before we switched to that, your first big jobs were for Lithuanian youth teams, national teams.
Yeah, but that was after England.
Yeah,
that was after
amateur
England.
Team
yeah, but
in London.
That 2009, 2010, I was head coach of U17 national team of Lithuania and U19 national team of Lithuania. So yes, we can say that this was where bigger jobs. It was with youth.
Yeah, do you think it's better for coaches, not necessarily those that weren't professional players, but all coaches to start from youth teams and slowly develop themselves as coaches?
You know, like, I think for myself that was the best thing that could happen, because you know, when probably I couldn't go straight to professional level. I needed that, you know, like to adjust, to understand how it works, how to manage the group, how to manage the individuals, to see the development in individuals. But for some top players, you know, like top professionals, you know, nobody is interested that much in children coaching. So I think that is a little bit of problem in certain countries, and especially like in Lithuania, because, you know, top professionals finish their career and go to coach under 6 or under 7 teams. You know, that is a big gap, you know, like, and you need special knowledge and you need special understanding when you're coaching youth. So I think for myself that was very good, because I could follow, you know, that education through some stages. I started with very little ones, then under 10s, under 12s, under 14s, then I moved to under 18 team, then semi-professional team. So I covered all the stages in my career, and I think for me that was really good.
Yeah, that process practically started in England, where you were in a lot of academies.
Yes.
How was that experience? Probably a big part of your forming as a coach.
Yeah, I think I would still give the most attention to those like two big stages of my career. I think, you know, first one was this Man United soccer schools. If it's not like a full-time job, not full-time academy, that was like unbelievable education for myself. First of all, the way they selected, the way they educated, the way they treated coaches, because the mantra was not about the best technical coach, but the most important thing was about the personality. So around me, when I used to go to work in those camps there, I had absolutely top people, top personalities around that I never met in one room, so many after leaving Man United soccer school. So that was like really huge step for myself, how to behave, how to act, where to get the confidence from. And the second was in Brentford. Brentford Academy. I was like under 12 and under 14 head coach, and that was down to my academy director, Jose Obanji. We didn't work for that long, maybe around a year, because after I signed a contract with Ekranas from Lithuania, who were champions at that time, so I didn't stay there for very long. But even for that time, that was, you know, this guy had a lot of influence on me. Probably he doesn't know that much how I feel about him, but he was very strict. He drive me crazy, you know, like sometimes to the stage that I used to hate the job, I used to hate this environment, but then he would switch, he would change, and you know, you understand that you're really improving and you're really getting better. So that environment that he created, he was a new academy director at that time, so basically we were building new academy at Brentford, and he had a massive impact on me.
Yeah, in that time in Man United, did you have insight in the first team?
No. No,
only academy?
No, only like it's not, you know, it was like different stages, first team, academy, and Man United soccer schools, you know, like it was also below academy, but we had a lot of educational days, you know, like together with the academy coaches, you know, like, so that education at Old Trafford or at Clifton at that time, even we had some events at Carrington, you know, like Man United training base, you know, that was really inspiring.
Yeah, Brentford in the meantime became some really specific football place, something based on data analytical department and that, and their success in championship, their overachievement, we can say. Also their Danish friends, Midtjylland, and their success in Champions League. Were they already shifting towards that data analytical?
No, I don't think so. That was the year 2010. No, I know that Matthew Benham, Brentford owner, he was like long-term support of Brentford, and he was probably influencing somehow, but no, not at that time. But of course, after I left Brentford Academy, you know, like I followed every season what they doing, how they doing, and you know, especially this Matthew Benham ideas and Rasmus Ankersen ideas, you know, like in his book Golden Mind Effect, you know, like left a really blueprint on me, and you know, like even to this day, you know, like, so 10 years passed, I still following and I watch what they're doing. And of course, for small clubs or people who were not professional football players, I think that is a really way, you know, like how you can be successful in football. And more and more, I think even football players or people who worked all their life in football can see, you know, like how thinking outside the box and how having a different approach, not only traditional approach, can be very beneficial in football. So I think I used to say, like even 4 or 5 years ago, some interviews in Lithuania, I used to say like, okay, watch Brentford, because a few years later, you know, like Moneyball was creating the movie and the book, people writing book about this story from baseball, somebody will write books and show the movies about Brentford, and this is exactly happening now, you know, like, and they were that short to being in Premiership instead of Fulham last season, losing, you know, only in playoffs.
Yeah, bad 3 last games and
yeah, and losing in extra time also against Fulham in this playoff.
Yeah, but nowadays we have stories about them in Football Hackers, for example. There's a chapter about them and all that. But did that? It wasn't the story of Brentford when you were there, but it also affected you later. Now you use data analytics, statistics, data in your everyday work. Or?
Yeah, I think I have no choice because, you know, like as I say, I started not from football background, coming from the side and working in Lithuania or in Latvia, or in this case in Gorice. We cannot say that we are top team in terms of budget. We always have someone to look up to. When we played in Lithuania with Žalgiris, the main objection was to get into the, as far as possible, in European competition. A little bit similar in Latvia, or okay, when I take the team was finished in 5th position, so also not the top team. So when you are in position like this, you always look how to narrow the gap. And to narrow the gap, if you in Osijek or in Hajduk, you know, this is as example talking about hypothetical situations. You see that you losing in this segment, you can say, okay, we identified the plan, we can go and buy the player, pay €500,000 or I don't know 700,000 euros in the clubs where I work. Unfortunately, that is not possible. We need to narrow the gap, finding the methods that are innovative, and the other coaches or the other club workers from other clubs, you know, they don't pay attention to that because they don't need, because they can spend money, and that's how they narrow the gap. So that's why these analytics and statistics and this type of approaches, like data approaches, were very important for me. And I think even now, you know, like, well, last 10 years, technologies really influence football a lot. But if we speak about football analytics, we are not that far ahead because we still don't know what are the main numbers that influence football. We still don't know, you know, like what are the main, some games it can be, you know, like one parameter, another game it can be different parameter that makes you to win. But where is this core? What is the main thing? We still don't know. And I think, you know, like the football analytics is doing, okay, maybe not the first steps in football, but it's only beginning. I think in another 10 or even 5 years, we will see much more things coming up and much more important things. And I think for the coaches and for the people who work in professional football, it's very important to stay in tune, because you will be left behind. Because there is no chance that one day now all these technologies disappear. So we have VAR now. So how VAR changes the football? What is better, to use zonal marking in standard situations or personal marking? Because, you know, now we read articles that says that even this Golden Boot award categories should be changed, because you can win a Golden Boot just scoring the penalties. If you're good at penalties, your team plays aggressive, you know, like VAR checks every moment, you can score 15-20 penalties only in one season, if the situation will be right for you. So I mentioned standard situations, because when you're marking personally, that again with the VAR gives many more opportunities, you know, like to get these penalties as well, more penalties during the season. So this is different things, you know, like that when we look, we don't pay attention, but when you go in the detail, it becomes very important. And I think that's why statistics and analytics is absolutely core value, and I think the role only will grow during the next few years. Yeah,
we see explosion in NBA, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, so I also think...
But this, even with speaking NBA, like baseball, American football, those like that they call American sports, they are much ahead than us Europeans, because they started to use much more early, and for them, they put a significant value into those numbers, and their sport is absolutely, you cannot imagine without even, we call these fantasy leagues were created because of, on statistical basis, on numbers basis. So I think in the future we will see more and more of that in football, and even now fantasy leagues in Premiership and in football we see how those games are growing. You know, like if, okay, 10 years ago maybe they were not at that level, but now with the statistics and with technologies, you know, more and more of that. And as I say, future belongs to numbers, to analytics, to statistics, and to technology.
Yeah, in America it started pretty earlier than in Europe. Moneyball is a great example. Yes. Moneyball was in 2001, I think. The Athletics won it. Yes. Not won it, but implemented that. So that was pretty long time ago. But speaking of those statistical models, I heard that you're a big fan of expected goals model. Well,
you know, I think everybody is a little bit fan of everything what is fashionable. You know, like now we have so much more behind than expected goals, you know, that we even, you know, don't need to go into that, but expected goals is also is not panacea, you know, like is not the main thing. But of course, when something new comes up, you know, like something fashionable, you know, I start to dive in, you know, like, and okay, expected goals 3-4 years ago when the concept starting to come up, you know, like then I was a big fan, you know, like because it was new. Now, you know, like expected goals is not.
It's mainstream.
It's mainstream, yeah. But okay, it's mainstream maybe in certain countries, but in certain countries, or for some people, you know, it's still quite a new thing. So it depends how hungry you are. So that's why for me it's very important that, you know, when those new things come up, that I'm one of the first one to know and to read and to analyze, to read those statistical articles or to watch like, I don't know, podcasts or games or how it is applied, or to speak with some specialists from that area, to read, you know, the scientific articles or first books that are published. You mentioned about football hackers, you know, like, so that book, when came out, you know, like probably I ordered that book like maybe 2 months before it came out, you know, so that is my job, to be as much as possible ahead. But that is also not really possible because you get so many new inventions. You know, we're talking about one thing, only about football analytics, and football tactics now is very overlapping, we can say. Is no football tactics now without analytics, but we have new developments in psychology, in physiology, in management, in group management, you know, like so many things, in individual approach, you know, like especially individual tactical approach, individual coaching, which is become more and more mainstream now. So, you know, like for one person to know everything is impossible. I need to be in touch, but I need to work with the best specialists that are next to me, to trust them, you know, like to improve them, and leave myself to manage the group.
Yeah, how the players are reacting to implementation of data and statistics? I
think we have to be very careful, and we cannot throw to the players all of that, all statistics. I think, and analytics is more down to the coaches. The players need to see the top of the iceberg. The players need to see something that they can apply to themselves. And yes, there are 1 or 2 players who are interested in XG and is interested in certain things from analysis, but that's not the case that we want to do, because the numbers, and the more you know, the more you can become rigid, and the more you can limit even your creativity. And for sure we don't want that to happen with the players, because, you know, like, if football still needs to be emotional game and creative game, and if we throw only data, you know, like, the players will stop enjoying, you know, football. We love football because we fell in love with football, I think all of us, and most of the time in childhood, when we don't care about statistics, we don't care about the numbers. And when it becomes our job, if you want to reach that level, that, you know, if like I say, everybody in top division, if we take like 10 coaches in Croatia, I mean in this first division, everybody knows their stuff. I'm sure everybody has their philosophy, everybody have their ideas, everybody have their training process, but some teams win, some teams don't win. Okay, we also can speak about the budget, but the best coaches, you know, like they work to get the best out of their players, and one of those tools how to get out the best from their players is analytics and statistics. But coaches will always know more than the players. We leave them, you know, like as I say, only just the tip of the iceberg, that conclusion that they can see what's happened on the football pitch in the certain moments, in the certain actions, and first of all apply to themselves, and then, you know, like the coach job is to try that player to see how this application will be seen on the team level, how he's gonna affect the team dynamic on the pitch.
Yeah.
So
well, Lovric is a great example of that balance between real life and statistics, because if you judge him by his shots and expected goals, he will not be so great, but he practically demolishes that.
Yes, but you see, like, you took now one individual example, but there are the teams who do the same. So that is like the idea, and that is the target for the coach. Also, like how to cheat these analytics, how to beat these analytics, these expected goals. Okay, number says one, but if like player like Lovric, or at the very, very top level, there's only one player, I think, Messi, who's overperforming, you know, year after year after year. So that means that this statistical model is not also completely right, because if you can beat it, you know, like there is on not once, but on like how to say, on number of years, that statistical model probably is not absolutely accurate as well. And for the coaches, I think the idea and the target would be to create the teams that constantly beat these statistic models and consistently overperforming.
Yeah, in your coaching development, you visited some top clubs, if I'm not mistaken, Barcelona also.
Yes,
how's that experience?
Oh, Barcelona experience was great. I spent, you know, like more than a week there, and I went together with another two coaches from my club at that time that I worked with, Ekranas, and our president of Ekranas at that time was in very good relationships with Sandro Rosell, Barcelona president, because they were members of same committee in European club associations, and we had very good access. We had like some meetings, some presentations delivered by Barcelona staff, you know, like let's say goalkeeping, analytics, fitness, and so on. And we had access to watch even first team trainings, and we spent like more than a week watching every single academy training, second team training, first team training, and a couple of games as well. So that was absolutely top experience. But again, you know, like at that time a little bit also, I was still, let's say, a young coach. I was assistant, not a head coach, and it was a little bit of this eureka moment when everything like felt into a puzzle. Like if you had this idea, that idea, that idea, in this Barcelona work experience came that everything like started to form the picture. Because at that time, you know, like this was like 8 years ago, the main ideas in football and in football development were about 10,000 hours challenge, about deliberate practice, about the mindsets, about 10,000, you know, repetitions and so on. And what they saw in Barcelona, they were doing exactly like that, without even, I don't know, reading those books, you know, like you could go there and see that they had, you know, like at that time, the guy who take care about us, Pere Gratakos, who was one of the directors in the club, you know, like he used to say to us, okay, you come, but you will not see nothing here, because we do the same exercise every day. You know, it's all the time the same exercise, starting with under 8s, and the same exercise with the first team. And it was exactly like that. They were doing the same stuff every day. absolutely the same stuff. One of these exercises were in every age group and every day since I was there. And then you realize, you know, like why Barcelona was so successful, because some of the guys who come from Barcelona Academy, and we know that that team consisted like mainly like 8 or 9 players coming from La Masia, from this academy. They were doing the same stuff together on the same pitch, on the same grid for 10 years. So I think if you could go blindfold, you know, they would still could play and overplay some teams, because that's how much automatism they had.
Yeah, that's on Barca DNA.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. But what's interesting is that players, you got insight into players on top level. Is there any difference between top level players and let's say lower level players, not in technical or physical ability, but in approach to training and something like that?
I think, you know, like you need to look for the context. You need to look, you know, individual cases. You know, I think this attitude, character, desire, for me, maybe even more separates top level players and average level players than physical attributes or technical attributes, because we can see that how many really top technical players are developing, and at some point they hit the wall or they hit the ceiling and they cannot make. And some players who, okay, maybe at some stage of their career they didn't have the same physical or technical attributes, but they had this desire, intrinsic motivation, you know, like to work, to not to give up, you know, like to see bigger vision, to see where they want to be, and they achieved more than those like average level players. So every case, I think, is a little bit of individual.
Yeah, you already mentioned Ekranas. What prompted your return from England to Lithuania? Was it to work with professionals now?
Yes, that was very easy decision, to be honest. You know, like by that time, for 9 years, I was living in London. I had finished education, I had family, I finished my university degree, and I understood very clearly that, you know, for not English, never played professional football, is absolutely no chance to get me a chance to go and to coach at pro level in England. Maximum what could I do? It was academy football, and you know, I coached at that time semi-professional team, Kingsbury London Tigers, and I wanted more of that. I wanted this stadium, you know, championship atmosphere with the people who can go and achieve the results, and not only coaching youth. Because with the youth, don't get me wrong, I really like to work with the young players, but also it's different age groups, and even at that time I understood very well that at youth level you don't have continuity. You cannot go and take, like even in Lithuania or in Latvia is done, I don't know like how much is that in Croatia, I think is changing, but it's still, that system that I think is completely wrong. When you take the players 7 years old in the first group and you take them up to, I don't know, they are 18. One coach does that. I think that is impossible. You need to be specialist in certain age groups, you know, like about certain level, like 12 to 14 years old. You need to know absolutely everything about the evolution at that age, how they live, what is their psychology, what is changes, what things to teach at that age. And then when you had the kids in that age, you passed 14 years old, you give to someone who knows how to work with them from 15 to 16. And when you do that from 15 to 16, you pass on to someone who knows how to do like 18 to 20. It's like a little bit, for example, when we go to the school, we go to primary school, and primary school teacher teaches us. She teaches us for 3-4 years, then give us to secondary school. Then we go to secondary school, then we go to higher school. We finish higher school, we go to university to learn from professors. So that's continuity in children football was not possible. And I understood if I stay there, I need then to specialize in certain age group and to be good in certain age group. But if I put all my energy and all my effort in that education, you know, I have to say bye-bye to my dream to be like a good football coach at the level where I want to be. So that's that decision was very easy made, you know, like when I got offer to come and work for Ekranas, I just said, of course, yes. You know, family support I always had, and we moved back to Lithuania.
And when you were switching from assistant coach position to the head coach position, what were the biggest obstacles? Of course, you had known all the players from the years when you were assistant coach, but what were the problems? If there was any.
At that time, you know, like we went through a lot of turbulence in the club, and you know, like going ahead, I worked 4 years as assistant, and then on parallel base, I worked with the second team, with the reserve team, and I was every day with the first team, and also in the evenings going and coaching second team. And a lot of players made that transition to the first team later. But then, you know, like financial difficulties happened, and club didn't have money, so all that my reserve team become
the first team.
The first team to play in the first in the top division, and I become the coach. So that transition was very smooth for me, because I one day, you know, like I was reserve team coach, and only the title changed, but I had the same players just playing in a better level competition. But to go ahead, after that season, the club went bankrupt. So we didn't exist. Only this year the club was revived, but for 5 years there was no Ekranas. And the biggest obstacle, you know, maybe I didn't feel that at that time, because as I said, for me, I didn't come to different changing room. Yeah. For me, probably the biggest obstacle was when from Ekranas, I moved to Žalgiris Vilnius. Žalgiris Vilnius was for me like also big club. Ekranas, Žalgiris, this is for me like very important clubs in my career. Ekranas gave me that first chance to work in professional football, but Žalgiris Vilnius was the club that I felt in love when I 5 years old. Since 1983, I was watching everyday game. I knew every of their play, and I knew history and everything. So for me, that was a really special occasion. But when I go to Žalgiris Vilnius, so this is my second contract, second year in the top division. But I go now from the like average club, mid-table club, because of financial difficulties. We went a little bit down, maybe not as much down as people predicted we will go, because we had some really good results and some good matches, and we played quite a good football. But Žalgiris Vilnius was champions. So when first training ever in Žalgiris, I go into the changing room. I had 15 A-Liga champions, cup winners. They were playing in Champions League that summer against Dinamo Zagreb. They were knocked out by Dinamo Zagreb. I had a player who won Champions League, Europa League with CSK Moscow, David Šembiras. I had like players who played 50 times for the national team. So that transition was much more difficult than the first transition. And the main things that I learned, you know, the main, like, maybe not obstacles, but the challenges that I had was about tactics, about technique, about how to organize the training process, because I think I knew how to do it. I had already certain experience, I had good education, you know, like, so this, in that part, I didn't embarrass myself. But how to speak, how to communicate, how to know what the players think, how to win this group, how to win the players' trust. So I think that's an ongoing process, and I think I'm learning this kind of stuff every day, even now. And I think it will never end till I be the coach, because every day, every person can teach you, and that's why it's very important for the coach, you know, like to stay humble and to understand that you are nothing without your players. And I repeat, you know, like to my assistants every day, you know, like when we go on the pitch and the players don't come, who we are? We're not the coaches anymore. We are coaches only when there are the players. So that's why this part of work is the most important for me, and you know, like I'm ready to keep learn every day, you know, like till the end of my days, maybe.
Yeah, with that transition to Žalgiris, were there a lot of media pressure because a young coach is coming to the champions?
I can't say media. I don't think the media, are very strong in sport or in football in Lithuania. Yeah, there are some websites, some newspapers, TV stations that they showed this, but it was, I think, much more pressure from not maybe Žalgiris fans, fans, they interested in results. That's the most important thing for them. But I think it was like a lot of, like I say, invisible pressure. Maybe, okay, is not written on the newspapers, on the website. It is not like discussed for the fans because they want only the result, but it's so-called experts, like all the former players, coaches and so on, because, okay, now Žalgiris appoint young coach with not full 1 season experience in top division, and coach who never played football at professional level, and coach who, came from somewhere or from nowhere. So that invisible pressure, like those talks, those comments, yes, it was felt, but I think also it was good for me, but I had to understand, and I think I understood that very clearly from first day, even when I was living in England, that I will have that pressure, and I was preparing for that pressure also, during that first stage of my career, and I think I draw motivation from that to prove, that okay, coming from nowhere, I can do something. So that's another, you can be crushed by that pressure, or you can use that pressure as a motivational tool. So, for me, this criticism, I think, is good. And even, okay, if I get sometimes, even in Croatia, for me it's good, because that forces me, not to be asleep. That is a good reminder for me that, look, you come from nowhere, and if you forget that you stop working even for 1 day or even for 1 second, you will go nowhere again, So that criticism I use as a reminder, I use as for motivation.
Yeah, motivation worked because 2 titles, league titles, couple of cups. So it was
3 cups.
3 cups.
3 cups and 2 super cups.
Yeah. So it was a really successful time at Žalgiris, but you yourself resigned. There was some rough patch of results.
Yeah.
But why did you leave? Because you didn't have the feeling you could lift the team anymore?
Yeah, or... I think every coach has that feeling, when he has the group in front, can he give still something, or it goes to deaf ears? So I think at that time, we were going to a very rough path. My 3rd year at Žalgiris is supposed to be the best because we put a lot of expectations for the Champions League, and that first part of the season we were playing really good, and we played really good football, and we played like friendly games. Just before Champions League match, we got draw to play against Ludogorets. At that time, Ludogorets were like in top form of their history, probably playing 4 years in a row in Champions League group stages, having like some top players, and they played very good football as well. A lot of Brazilians, very technical players. So just like a couple of weeks before that game, Champions League game, we beat Göteborg from Sweden, in Žalgiris, in Vilnius 3-1. We beat Bate Borisov, so we were in good form, and we beat Ludogorets at home. We beat quite convincingly. Even the score 2-1 to this day, I think, doesn't reflect how the game was, because I think we're supposed to win by bigger margin. But then we go there, and like I always say, the top teams, they play the best when they're in the worst situation, when they pushed back to the wall. They know how to fight, they know how to get the maximum. And we, like in Lithuania, we never had like this experience that every match is like we need to push like maximum. Some games we used to go, and in the tunnel we know that we're gonna win for sure. It just matters, it's gonna be 3-1 or it's gonna be 3-0. And when we go there to Razgrad, we lost that game, and after that, the performance went really down. We were leading in championship by 10 points, and you know, like we didn't pay attention to the team. Some players we sent on loan, you know, like we didn't look to strengthen the team, and the players were demotivated because, you know, they thought we're gonna win championship anyway. And myself as a coach, I didn't find the methods, or didn't find the ways how to motivate and how to improve the team. So I had to take responsibility.
Yeah, the next step was in Latvia. That was a, let's say, newly formed team. They were the second year, I think, in top division.
My first year was their third season in top division. First season they finished 6th, second season they finished 5th.
Yeah, but what was the main motivation to join that young team, let's say it like that?
Well, I needed the next step, first of all, and after Žalgiris Vilnius, you know, it was difficult to find that next step in Lithuania, because you go to any other club, it's not gonna be up, it's gonna be down, because there is no better team than Žalgiris. Okay, Sūduva after that, you know, like they went and they showed that they can be very successful, but they had very successful coach, so I didn't even look that way, and I knew, and I wanted, you know, like to go somewhere where I show that I can work again alone without any support, again, maybe new country, you know, even if it's close to Lithuania, but you still are foreigner there, and again, you know, like to prove those doubters, those people that I can do something, and I think that was the first thing, and the second thing, the people. Because the people I found there at RFS in Latvia, I think they were absolutely top people, and I spent very, very good 2 years in football working there, and the club is really progressing, and I believe, you know, like that it can be like really, really strong and powerful club in Baltic states in the nearest future. And we won 3rd place in the first season, so we go to Europe, we played Olympia Ljubljana in the Europa League. We won the cup a year after, first ever trophy in the club's history, and then we won silver medal. So every year we were progressing, we were growing, you know, like, and till Gorice's offer came, you know, like I was very satisfied working there.
Yeah, and coming into Croatia, into Gorice, did you know the style of play that Gorice played before you, and also did the, let's say, power of the top domestic clubs in Croatia?
Yes, of course. Mindaugas Nikoličius worked here, you know, like we were very close when we worked in Žalgiris Vilnius, and of course he followed my work in Latvia, I followed his work in Croatia. I cannot say that I watched every single match, but I was watching quite regularly. I knew most of the players, and of course I know, even without Mindaugas Nikoličius, I know the power in Croatian football. I know Dinamo, I know Hajduk, I know other clubs, you know, so because even in Lithuania, Latvia, I always had some Croatian players in my clubs there, so it's impossible not to follow the Croatian football.
Yeah, you shifted Gorice's play style more towards possession-based football, I don't know, playing with the ball. Is that kind of your vision of football?
Yes, and I think that that type of style fits me better, and I think most of the players, they want to play that kind of football, but maybe I was privileged to work and lucky to work in this type of clubs. Like when I was in Ekranas, they were champions, Žalgiris was champions. When I go to RFS, first year we played quite counter-attacking football, but second year we wanted only to dominate. So I worked with the players in those environments that were fighting, you know, like for the top places. And even if you look to my you know, like past, you know, okay, I don't want to be arrogant, but I won medals with every club that I worked with, you know, so that shows that they had the players who could fight for the top positions and not for relegation. And coming to Gorice, of course, you know, that happened very fast, but when I sit during this quarantine and even before, I analyzed, you know, the stats, I saw that Gorice, okay, is a mid-table club, but last club in terms of possession. At that time, you know, like when you look, you know, this table, and I think it was also quite good analysis published in, what is this website called, Football Analysis something football technical analysis or something like this, and it was even by some Croatian guy that was in English but written by Croatian guy, analysis about Croatian league. Gorica was bottom place with I think 42 or 43% of possession per game. So I said, okay, we don't need to become like Dinamo and to be first place, but for sure, if we middle table team, 50%. Okay, can we have like to raise this? Because for me, this is like mutual, a lot of benefits. You know, like you have ball more, that means you can score more. You have ball more, you can concede more because you can create more. You can create. You can concede less because opponent has the ball less. You can earn more standard situations. So this is a lot of benefits, you know, like, and we started to work towards that style. And I think it's very important for the players because, you know, that is showing that you have trust in them, you know, that you give them this mandate to play football. And I think most of the players, they want to do that.
Yeah, also the result is always a priority, but listening to this, aesthetically pleasing football is also an objective in your game.
But you know, like also even before that, when I worked in Lithuania, I had like sometimes I had reputation that I'm also quite a negative, that I can know how to build the bus, you know, and so on. So speaking about this, you know, like we have to say that there is no bad and good way. It all depends about the context, and especially now, this context is very important in exactly this season or maybe next season because of this COVID-19 situation, when, you know, like sometimes you lose half of the team, you know, like they need to go to isolation or they ill and they come back, and at the moment we still don't have the books or the scientific articles written how to coach these players who coming back from this illness, what kind of process they need to go, what kind of training loads they need to give, because to some players they go and train like nothing happened, and for some players they come and they like exhausted after 5 or 10 minutes. So in this environment you need to choose, you need to be smart, you know, like how to adapt and how to change tactically, because if you have a context that you don't have your main players and you cannot play this type of football, you always can go and change that. So I think that is very important, and one of the most important things that coach has to do is to be flexible in this approach.
And now you have spent about 8 months in Croatia. You've totally adapted to the league. But can you say what is the biggest difference between, for example, Lithuanian First Division or Latvian First Division compared with Croatian?
You know, it's very simple. I like all the time I repeat the same, but I think it's the players' qualities. It's no offense to any player that I worked before in Lithuania or Latvia. All of them, you know, they know what I think about them. They're great people, but for sure Croatian football level is much more higher than Lithuanian or Latvian football level. And this, when we work in Latvia or Lithuania, we wait for this European competition summer, you know, to play these qualifying games, because that for us like is like Christmas. So you go, you know, like you play, is a lot of interest, fans, media, you play top games against like teams that are better than you, that you need to show your maximum. And in Croatia, I feel like I play this type of games, these like, let's say, Christmas games every weekend. Because like last game was against Dinamo, before was Hajduk, before was Osijek, before was Lokomotiva, you know, like other teams, and even it doesn't matter, you know, like the team is top or bottom, you know, like if you're not at maximum, you can lose points on that day. So in that type of environment, you grow. You grow much more faster because you need to analyze, because you cannot leave nothing to the chance. If we, like, for example, do 3 mistakes with Žalgiris Vilnius, but opponent don't have quality, they don't score, we can close the eyes and say, okay, nothing happens. But we know here with Gorica, like last game was the best educational tool against Dinamo. We played, you know, this type of moments in Lithuania. You know, we do mistakes the other team is not gonna score. But when you play against a player like Gavranovic, he scores, and then you see, okay, it's like we played, we matched them in this phase, we matched them in this phase, we finish second half, we look to the board, it's 2-0 down. And you think how this can happen, you know, like before they scored first goal, they didn't create even one chance. So that mastery, you know, like that's what we need to match. That's what we coaches need to coach our team, to give the players the tools, that development, to develop them faster, you know, like to solve those problems on the pitch.
Yeah, so probably now in Gorice you give more tactical assignments to players than in previous clubs, more specific tasks, or how does it manifest?
I don't think so. I don't think. I think the football everywhere played is the same. I think it can be even the opposite, because better level players, they grasp those ideas much more faster, or they can execute these ideas much faster.
Better in improvisation.
Yeah, and the decision making, you know, like is at a higher level. So I cannot say, you know, like that we need to do more or less, but of course, you know, with all what I mentioned about better execution, about better defense decision making, about better communication and understanding between players, there's also higher level. So we go like, I have better team, but I also have a better level. So I need, you know, like for me the biggest challenge was to see how my ideas, how my approach, how my training process works at this level. And I'm not disappointed. I'm very happy, you know, like with the players I have, and what kind of group of players we have. And I think is much more can be done. Is all about, again, you know, like the time. I think during those 7 or 8 months, I don't know, like now, if we take out this isolation period, is a little bit less, maybe not 8, but for sure we were developing. But if we have, like now, I would like to see how we're gonna be after another 8 months, and I'm sure, you know, like we can be better.
Yeah, we have to tiptoe around tactical parts, but because we don't want to reveal too much to your future opponents.
No problem. We can, you know, like I think, you know, like if future opponents analyze how we play, you know, like
they already know.
They know already, you know, like, and it's we can show everything what we want, but when we go into specific preparations, when we have specific context, you know, like when we're preparing for opponents or opponent preparing for us, or exercises we use, you know, like is not that overall view, but is the specific details that makes the difference. Yeah. So that's what I believe. I believe in details.
Yeah. Before we get into your personal work, do you follow? I know you follow a lot of games that plays around Europe. So, is there any tactical innovation or some tactical part of somebody's game, some coach that you really like?
Well, you know, like I cannot say about tactical innovation. I think tactical innovation comes from a little bit from fashion and results. If you have good results, you know, like that is already tactical innovation, and it doesn't matter is old, is new, you know, like, and a little bit is also what I find that those teams that play at the top level, and they are more seen like top 5 championships and Champions League, you know, games. So of course, you know, like because a lot of people see them, a lot of people analyze them, they are in a much better position to be tactically creative. And we, like when you work in Latvia or Lithuania, you can do exactly the same thing much earlier, but nobody will see that because nobody is watching this championship, or even if they're watching, you know, like they say, oh, you know, like it's not gonna work at that level. But when it works at top 5 championship levels, and when it works in Champions League, obviously that becomes tactical innovation. I'm not like any other coaches. I watch as many games as possible. I follow certain patterns. I follow certain coaches. Mostly, like last season, I was following mostly Bundesliga coaches. I cannot say that I'm following, you know, like with my favorite championship, you know, like is Bundesliga.
Yeah.
I really like Serie A, you know, so that is my passion at the moment, but I really like to watch how some German coaches work or Bundesliga coaches work. And I always try to find, you know, like some coaches that work in smaller leagues, like can say like Holland, Belgium, you know, like Bodo Glimt, yes, was introduced this summer because 2 Lithuanian clubs played against them, and try to follow them, you know, like that. So try to follow 1 or 2 coaches in the smaller leagues that not many people pay attention, but you know, a lot of times some innovations come from the bottom rather from the top, because at the bottom you have more freedom to try, you know, like, and you are not judged as much as or criticized as much as if you try, you know, like at the top level.
Watching your team play, you're quite fluid with tactics, with 4 switching to 3 in the back. Do you reckon that today's football or tactics is more about player roles than those formation numbers that are
absolutely. I think, you know, like can we touch, you know, like a little bit, yeah. So, you know, like when we go to, you know, yesterday evening we watched Champions League games, you know, like players introduced, they put into their positions, you know, like let's say, okay, we play this and that team, play 4-2-3-1 formation and so on. And for people that don't work in football, for average fan, it sticks in mind, or that is how, you know, like it's played, or if it's 4-4-2, you know, like, but as soon as the game starts, I think that starting organization you can see only when is a kickoff. When you kick off the ball, you know, like that organization changes. And in what I believe, you know, like I believe first of all in dynamism. I believe, you know, like that you cannot close the player into the box, you know, like, and to perform only one specific role, because football, the way it evolves, you know, like when we go now again to that top level, Champions League level, let's say, you know, the players, you know, they can do everything. They can play every position. And I think, you know, like if one day me or I have responsibility in front of my players, because every single my player, they dream to play at that level. So if I restricting them and if I'm not giving them the tools to try to learn to come as close as possible to that Champions League level, I'm cheating them, because they believe in club, they believe in themselves, they believe in the coach, that the coach will teach them something that will give them step up into their career. So if we analyze, and I'm very big on this evidence-based coaching, and evidence-based coaching is the concept that I learned also in England, working with one of my colleagues in Man United soccer schools. You know, like this is basically watching, understanding, thinking, overthinking the tendencies, modern tendencies of the football. So we touched a little bit analytics, statistics, you know, like if, for example, where is the biggest percentage goals scored? It's called like from that area. It's called golden zone, it can be called zone 14, it has different names. So if that gives us the best percentage to score the goals, when my player wants to go to the Champions League level, he needs to understand, he needs to know, and he needs to have the tools to execute the actions that, or have the communication with his teammates to help his team to score goals from that area. So this, as you see, connects like analysis, understanding, you know, like watching football into what we want to train. And in every training and every single exercise, what we do, we want to see how we're going to play. I don't ask my players like to run every day in training and then go and to show some kind of magic in the game. And you know, like if he doesn't show, like say, why you didn't do this? First of all, what I have to do to give them the tools. So every single day we train how we want to play on the weekend.
Yeah, and speaking of that, how do you create those zones to give you an advantage over a player, numerical advantage or something?
Overloads, you mean? Yeah, so that is, you know, like one of the most difficult things for football coach to do, because you know, like if we speak about in attack, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's possible to create big numerical advantage in the last third. You can do it, but you cannot do it every time. So a lot of times, you know, like when you have certain situation 2v2, that is already good enough. And that's why, you know, we need technically developed players who can execute decision making in certain situations 1v1 or 2v2, because also one of the most important things in my vision in my football is the balance. When we go into attack, let's say we have certain number of players going into the attack, we need to leave someone behind that. Anytime we're gonna lose the ball, to have certain number of players in certain shape, that also depends on the context, how the opposition plays, that we can prevent opponents attacking transition with our defensive transition or pressing. So if we want to leave, let's say, 2 players down, you know, like it is impossible to create numerical advantage. But now we're talking about positional attack. If we talk about, you know, like certain situations when we starting to defend and we have like certain defensive organization, and opponent goes up, and we, let's say, you know, like any shape we have, let's say, you know, like we have phase like this, and I don't know, like the ball goes, we intercept the ball. So now, of course we can. Now it depends on the speed. Now it depends on the situation. So this is like, again, a lot of different context, and I really hate to speak about the football, about tactics, not having football context, because then you speak about, you know, nothing. We can speak about the air forecast, you know, like tomorrow it's gonna be rain, or it's gonna be, you can say it's gonna be rain. Now I'm gonna say no, it's sunshine. But then another person comes and say, look, I saw the weather maps, you know, like this and this forming, and now, okay, now we have certain things that we can rely on, we have tendencies, and we can predict. And if we speak about, like, you know, okay, my team always plays 4-4-2, but I don't know, like, what opponent doing, how they playing, what players they have, what shape, how they organize themselves, you know, like, I'm speaking about nothing. And I think the best coaches, you know, like, they organize taking everything within the context.
Yeah, was there any, I don't know, special match, let's say it like that, where you were tactically mismatched with an opponent, and the problems you have to deal with?
I think, you know, like how we evaluate this, we beat them tactically or we didn't beat them tactically, because this is, again, you know, like another context. We can say we beat them because we win the game. Like, I can speak about the matches, like last season match, for example, Gorice Rijeka. Yeah, like we win the game 2-1. And, you know, but this is one of the worst games for me and for my team, because I think we were totally clueless, especially in the first half. And, you know, like we had penalty, we scored, and we survived. Second half, okay, we changed the shape, we improved, you know, like, and okay, if you say this is how we tactically beat them, but that is not for me. For me, it's only in that game only good was the result. But there are certain games when, for example, we didn't win or we drew with Gorica, but I think, you know, like tactically we were really better than the opponent. We knew what's gonna happen. We predicted. We won the ball in certain zones where we wanted. On that day, our execution to score the goal was not good enough, and the opponent execution was better. Even they created less. So that is, again, you know, like the moments that we need to think. But if to speak, you know, like about the tactical board, I maybe not the match, because the set, again, you know, like different matches, you know, like ask for different things, but I can show, you know, like a couple of ideas, you know, like that even from last season when I played with RFS, you know, like how we played against Olympia, Ljubljana, you know, like at home, or in some domestic championship, you know, like how we won some games, you know, like again talking about dynamics, you know, like okay, starting organization, if we go like 4-2-3-1, one we defend, but as soon as we win the ball, that was like very good example was our first game, and we even can have like even presentation about that game that we could show on videos, you know, like we had instructed opponent played actually 4-4-2, you know, like tried to press with 4-4-2 formation. That was second game in the championship already, and we watched the first game. They played 4-4-2 with Italian coach, very strict and good on tactics, but they tried to press with those two strikers. And when that happens, you know, like obviously that creates zones because they need to be supported. If they support it here, that's okay, but that creates the zone here. So because that was second game of the season, we analyzed them very well, and we said, okay, they're not gonna be able to do that. They either will leave this zone, or if they go up, they will leave that zone, you know, like for us to explode. So first of all, if we play against two strikers, we need overload in our construction phase. If we're gonna keep only with the goalkeeper, at certain point, you know, like they will not let us to play, and you know, like the ball goes. If the ball goes back, rush is gonna be just kick. So we need to be able to play in a way that we can beat this first line of defense. Now again comes into the action, the context. We have two center backs. One of them is very good playing with the ball. One of them is not very good playing with the ball. His main attribute is defending high balls, but he's not comfortable to play the ball, especially vertical ball forward. So if, for example, how we try to solve this problem, we asked this guy, instructed all the time when we win the ball to come in here. So now we have the width. Now this player, he is like secured because most of his passes he can do parallel across of the pitch, you know, not to risk to play forward, and those guys, you know, like they can drive the ball forward. So now we were looking, you know, like for the fullbacks to go up as much as possible, and this another midfielder was taking the central position. This player, like from starting position, this number 10, he was interested only in going and overloading when we deliver the ball here, that we have overloads in this area. So now we have like this organization, the 3 versus 2, we can overplay here. What started to happen, of course, they tried to push and to support their players. So now, you know, like we talking about intersectoral relationships. If we have one sector here, we can have horizontal sectors, we can have like vertical sectors. We like the best teams plays the most fluid football, where those actions between sectors, you know, like players know how to change their positions and what to do into those different sectors. So what we try to combine exactly like that. So we had very beautiful symmetry on that pitch. So if you here see like 3 players, 1, we can divide, you know, like pitch in vertical. We will have like, okay, you have with those 2 players, you have between the lines, you have 2 strikers in central zone, you have midfielder here. So now let's say the ball goes towards that side. This player is not interested the ball. His job is to go up and even more to overload that zone. Just in case, if we beat those 6 players, then we have massive overload here, because he will go, and you know, like for them it's gonna be very difficult to come back. And now, if the ball is here, this player, they interested to come and to try to create, you know, like overload, because 1, 2, 3, 4, we try to do on 4. If this one comes, yes, then we have, you know, like also opportunity to play. And if, for example, okay, we tried to play, they close, we cannot go, we recycle back, we go to the other side, now the ball comes here. So now this player is not interested, he goes and tries to overload, you know, here, but now this player needs to come in between the lines and to play. And that was really beautiful. Like in first 10 minutes we were leading 2-0, but I cannot tell you, you know, like first like 10 of our attacks were absolutely exemplary. Every moment we created, the ball was going, you know, like they started like really pressing, so we few times we came through this, you know, that 5 versus 4. First attack in 2nd minute, the ball went to our striker turned, you know, sent the ball to the side, he went, they were coming, you know, it was like situation, cross, 2nd minute, the ball was into the net. And then, you know, like as I say, this was Italian coach, and he did really good, and he very much improved that team, especially in a little bit later stages of the season. Second game was much more difficult against them. So what has happened, they started, okay, not to push that much, but to be very compact. So in that cases, what we do and what we try to do, and I think most of the teams, they do that, you know, is like, okay, we still had that massive possession, amount of possession, because those 3 players were absolutely comfortable to overplay, but because of compactness, we couldn't reach that player, we couldn't reach those players between half spaces. So more and more than, you know, like what's happened, this player, as I say, this was holding midfielder. He was all the time, as soon as we win the ball in defense, he drops in here. That change was like one of the best games I coached. And very good parser of the ball. Also, the player who can play as a center back and who can play as a holding midfielder. So when the ball was coming, you know, like he had that pass that, you know, like cuts that player side, and we received the ball here. And those players that were playing in half spaces, they constantly were making runs behind. So when that player was receiving the ball here, so that is overload 2 versus 1, and automatically send the ball come here and were to cross or to cut back. So we were overplaying very well. But that's, I showed you only one example. And I showed you, you know, like the concept that we talk is a nice symmetry. That we have like, okay, players in the half spaces, we have width, we have couple here, we have like, so we divide the pitch, it's gonna be 5 players on that side or 5 players on that side. We divide the sectors, it's gonna be like, you very clearly can see 3, 1, 4, 2, you know, like in that way. But what I'm a big fan in tactics of playing with asymmetrical shapes. And I started to do that, I think, honestly, again, not being arrogant, but I believe even earlier than I read in some articles or tactical articles or listen in podcasts, maybe in season 2000, like 15 and 16, you know, like we were already with Žalgiris Vilnius playing already with those shapes that was asymmetrical, you know, like, and not easy to teach the players, but you know, like, let's take any formation, you know, like, okay, we play 4-2-3-1, and we have objective to beat those 2 defenders. We need to create 3 three players line that, you know, we are comfortable to be them to come out of possession. So again, we can choose the center back. We usually doing, okay, right back goes up. So this central defender plays that zone, this central defender plays here, and this one plays here. Again, context. Who is best in which situation? I don't want, you know, like to have maybe my best passer or play aggressive who knows how to play vertical ball in this situation, because he always have to stay in this situation. So if I have, like, let's say Matthew Steenwarden, who is very good reading the situation, who's very good technical player, who can find the pass, I want him to go in opposition half as much as possible, because I know that is worth the gamble, that during the season he will make 4 or 5 very important passes, pre-assists or even assists. Or I don't know if you remember our first match against Varaždin, how he assisted in the opposition penalty box, winning the ball here, dribble, pass, came and assisted for the goal. So I don't think in many teams you can see the center back going and finishing the attack in the opposition penalty box. And then you have like certain players that you like, okay, they are good defensively, their strongest point, you know, fast, okay, we need to keep them for balanced center. Some fullbacks are very good to go forward and to cross, and some fullbacks, their main attributes is defensive situations. So then again, you know, like you need to shift. So when you talk about asymmetric shapes, you need to analyze every single player and to find the best attributes, but even that is not enough. Because now, if I'm asking this player to go up, and this player is not comfortable play between lines, he wants to receive the ball with the face to the opposition and to execute 1v1 situations that he faces the opponent and he is fast. Okay, I can use maybe as an example, I don't know, from the other team, okay, let's say we have Lirim Kastrati, who plays now for Dinamo Zagreb. Yeah, he's really top player with his speed, with his execution, 1v1 situations. So you want this player to be like, yeah, to isolate 1v1 and to have him to beat 1v1. Yeah, and if we have like, let's say, I don't know, Hamad, for example, who plays for Gorice, we want him to be in here because he's good between the lines, he can receive, he can turn, he can pass, he can do many things. So if we have a player who doesn't want to go in and whose best attributes to stay on the line, how we gonna utilize this player going all the time up? So that communication between them needs to be different and is on that side as well. So if we ask that player to come in, and in a lot of games we played asking, you know, like to create this player from winger to become number 10 position, this player to go. So now we have 3 players playing back. This player needs to have attributes to play wide, because we cannot play without the width on the side, because of the main objective in the attacking play is to use pitch as big as possible. So again, you know, like we need a player who is good playing on that side. And now, do we need 2 holding midfielders? Do we need 2 organizers? Or is enough 1? So here in the description of those players, I use the name, you know, like 2 categories: ball winners and ball players. So ball winner is the player who more like on defensive duties, who's very good, who's energetic, protecting, you know, like that space. And or you can play with a player who is equally good with his defensive capacities in attacking play. Or he likes, you know, like to play, for example, if we talk about the ball player, the most obvious would be, let's say, okay, Andreas Pirlo, and the ball winner maybe would be like
Kante.
Well, Kante now role very changed. I think
early
or Matic, for example, from Manchester United, you know, like big tall players who like, you know, like to destroy the opponent, you know, like stopping their attacks. So also coach's choice. You can play with 2 ball winners, You can play with 2 ball players, or you can play with 1 ball player and with 1 ball winner. So that it changes as well, you know, like can they go up? And this is the concept that I also like really like, where you talk a lot, you know, at this fans level, you know, supporters level, or number 10. Or this team needs number 10. Or this team, you know, they don't have not good number 10. And I hear, you know, like even about Gorica people speak, you know, oh, number 10 is not used and so on. But there's the idea that you can have not 1 number 10 in the game. You can play with 3, you can play with 4 number 10s. So if I ask my wingers or half wingers to come inside, I have striker, another one comes in. If I play with 2 ball players, another one comes in. So in certain phases in the game, in attack, and if I'm good and my players are comfortable playing the ball and I come and push, I can have 3 or 4 players playing as a number 10 position. And all of them do the same role. So that is beauty of football for me, that you can, you know, when you know the context, and you can create a lot of different things, you know, like with certain level players. So now, you know, like if we see on the pitch now, we look to the whites and see what kind of shape is this. 3, 1, okay, 3, 3, 3, 1, 3, 3, okay. But as soon as we lose the ball, what is happening? This center back goes to back position, center back goes to back position, full back goes to his position. This player who now number 10, but he is playing in more like here, he comes here. So this guy becomes like again more on the side in defensive phase. This like, okay, number 10 here, and we have like this. So you mentioned Kante, but in Chelsea, a lot of times he play like nearly number 10.
Yeah,
player.
with his position
yeah,
change.
Exactly. So what is the logic of that? What coach or the team want to create? So want like the football changes in a way that in certain teams number 10 is best defensive player. Why is that? Because when you lose the ball, you have your best defensive player who can go and win the ball high on the pitch. So that is, you know, like different shapes, different methods and different ideas, and not knowing what the coach wants to create and what context he's thinking about, what players he has in his disposition is very difficult to judge and to understand what they do, because, you know, it's the easiest way to see the goal was scored or the goal wasn't scored. Because, but if we use analytics and if we watch and we speak about XG or conceded XG, you know, like all those ideas come handy only in the long term. In one game, you know, like you can win with the worst tactics and lose with the best tactics. But if you use the best tactics for certain number of games, for sure, you know, like the better results will come up because the players understand these concepts better and better, and when they become unconsciously competent in these moments, you know, they don't need to think where they need to be, they can support each other, and the communication becomes so good that if we were like situation like that, but I'm playing on the wing, but I see that I will be closer here and you will be close, and we change for that certain moment, that is the team becomes top. But at the moment, even in Gorice, I can say we need time, you know, like every team, you know, like, but we're working on those concepts, and I believe, you know, like we only can get better.
Yeah. Final question. In the defensive phase, you prefer pressing. So
I can speak, you know, like 2 days and we're not gonna finish this podcast. You know, like this is a little bit more complicated. I think is again that part. It a lot of depends on the context. What kind of players I have for this Saturday?
Yeah.
Do I have, you know, players who are ball players, or I have more players who are ball winners? Do I have players who inform more ball players or more ball winners? Because the best thing is to have the balance. But sometimes balance to have is not possible because you know, like your best ball players are like injured or coming back from injury, or they lost the form, or they ill or something. So you need to play with the ball winners. So then it's different concept. Then you need to think, okay, how we gonna press, how to win the ball more up of the pitch, because if we win the ball in attacking third, that's, you know, like you know guys, statistics, you know, if we win in the final third, it can be from 50-51% better chance, you know, like to score the goal. If we win in central area, it's gonna be about 30 something, you know, depending on the league, depending on quality of your team. And if we go, you know, like and win the ball in our position, in our final third, we have less than 10% chance, you know, like scoring. So with certain teams I would play more for pressing, and with certain teams I would play more for middle block, and I'm not a big fan to play with the low block. But if the opponent, I think it depends a little bit more about your mentality, because I think you don't need to play low block. It's only opponent can force you to do that. And if opponent really good and forcing you to do that, you need to know how to do that. Because, you know, like you can say, okay, we're gonna go now and we're gonna have possession 65%, but the game starts and it is you who have 35% and opponent have 65%. So that's, you know, like you need to know how to do all those stages. But I like pressing traps, especially, you know, like, and I think even in Croatia we used 4 or 5 different methods how to press, and different zones where to win the ball, you know, like with playing different teams. With one teams we do one thing, with other teams we do other thing, you know, like, but with some teams we were very successful. I remember the game against our first game last season against Dinamo Zagreb, when we played in Velika Gorica, you know, that was, for pressing, was one of the best executed teams, you know, one of the best executed games that my teams played. We win countless balls, you know, like in certain areas, and we restricted Dinamo. I had only 5 shots on goal during whole game. Of course, that was not maybe the best Dinamo, not that much motivated one. Oh, actually they could win the championship in that game, but we stopped.
Prolonged it.
Yeah, we prolonged it, not for long, unfortunately, or fortunately. So, but yeah, so different contexts, different games, and different analysis.
Yeah. Coach, thank you for coming. Thank you for this tactical analysis.
Hvala, lepo.
Yeah. Good luck in the rest of the season, and hope team gets well, because now it's critical time.
Yeah, all will be okay.
Hvala i vama na praćenju. Do nekog našeg idućeg podcasta, ljudi. Pozdrav!